Okay, so the balanced budget multiplier is something we're going to go over in class, but I'll go over it here with you. And it says an increase of both government spending and taxes will leave you with a balanced budget. So if you increase government spending by 100, if you increase taxes by 100, you have a balanced budget, right? You're spending 100, but you're bringing in 100. How it also, though, improves GDP by 100, and let me show you why. So say that spending multiplier is 5. We know if the spending multiplier is 5, the tax multiplier would be -4, right? 1 minus the spending. So if you increase government spending by 100, and I times it by 5, the multiplier, government GDP increases by 500. If I increase taxes by 100, and I times it by -4, GDP decreases by 400. So I get $100 increase in GDP and a balanced budget. So and by the way, one of their favorite questions, the last the balanced budget multiplier, but also is government increases spending and increases taxes at the same amount. What happens to GDP? And students say it stays the same a lot. But remember, the multipliers are different. So government spending, if they're both going in the same direction, government spending is always going to outpace taxes because the multiplier is bigger. All right. So be aware of that type of question on the test where they give you both of them and they ask you like which one influences more. Okay. I'll probably say that again today in class. All right. The second thing is right, the crowding out effect. We talked about this like cut of brush in class. So this is ASAD. You're here and government spends. Well, government spending is going to shift AD to the right. However, when they call it deficit spending, which is government borrowing money to spend. All right, when government goes and borrows money, it yanks up the interest rates in the banks. So interest rates go up. Now businesses don't want to borrow, so business investment goes down. And that's where you get AD kicking back a little, and that's crowding out. Now, I don't know why. Well, I probably could guess why. Kids do horrible on this question. So the College Board puts it on the AP exam year after year. Kids do bad year after year. So I put a star next to it. Also, if you remember the breakdown, there were 2 questions on the test on the balanced budget. So I keep that in mind. All right, shifters of LRAS, 1 capital stock. What do I mean by capital stock? That's machines, factories, things that make things. Then, of course, an increase or decrease in natural resources, an increase and decrease in human resources, and technology. Now, if you really think of the production possibilities curve, change in quantity or quality of resources really takes these 3. I just broke them down. And because these are the way they seem to be on questions on the AP exam. And then the 4th one is technology. So if you really think, if the LRAS shifts, the production possibilities curve is also going to shift out. And just remember, when they talk economic growth, that means the LRAS, that's the long run. Okay. All right. Aggregate demand. All right. Aggregate demand is all goods and services that buyers are willing and able to purchase at different price levels. All goods and services that buyers are willing to purchase at different price levels. Okay. I think that's all you need there. All right. So why is aggregate demand? So real balance effect, and then put in parentheses the wealth effect. Your book calls it the wealth effect. I put real balance because that's what the other textbooks call it, so we know both. And that's just about purchasing power, okay? You could just really put that into just purchasing power, all right? So meaning if price levels go up, you're going to purchase less than you did before. Okay. Man, I didn't give you a lot of space to write this. Okay. All right, the second is interest rate effect. All right. And the interest rate effect is what causes crowding out in a way. Interest rates go up in investment. But here it's a price levels go up. The demand for money increases. That causes interest to go up and business investment to go down. Okay. And then the third is going to be the foreign trade effect. And if price levels go up in the United States, foreign countries are going to buy less, so net exports are going to decrease. We're also going to buy more from foreign countries, so imports will increase. All right, so you had the wealth slash real balance, you had the interest rate, and then the foreign trade effect. Okay. All right. All right. So those are the shifters of aggregate demand, right? Consumption, investment, government spending, and net export. I went the wrong way. All right. Consumption. Now, I think it's going to have wealth here. Yeah, consumer wealth. So stock market. Income is a shifter for consumption. Optimism and pessimism, shifters for consumption. Okay. All right. Taxes. All right. And again, if they don't say what taxes, you assume they're income taxes. All right. I really wouldn't worry about household indebtedness. I don't think they use that a lot. But taxes, optimism and pessimism, wealth, stock market, those are common consumption ones. Okay. All right. Investment. Interest rates. You're not going to see a lot of that on this, I don't think. And then optimism and pessimism for investment too. Okay. All right. The third is government spending. Just remember, government spending, not really on welfare or things like that, but like on military and stuff like that. And then the fourth is net exports. Okay, those are all the shifters of aggregate demand. Don't worry about exchange rates because there won't be questions. We'll do a whole unit on exchange rates. Okay. All right. Aggregate supply. There is your definition of aggregate supply up there. And just remember, it has short and long run. And just remember, in the short run, wages and resource prices will not increase as price levels increase. Those are the sticky wages. Then in the long run, contracts expire, so they're flexible. Okay. We good on this or? Okay. All right, then you got RAP. All right. So resources is R. Wages are a resource. All right. It seems to be something we're really struggling with. An increase of wages shifts SRAS left. Wages, oil, production costs. Those are three. They're not the only three, but anything that would make like things is a resource. But wages, oil, and production costs are used a lot. You got to know that an increase in wages shifts. And by the one I think they get a lot is a decrease in wages shifts supply right. All right, actions of government. That would be business taxes, subsidies to. It has to say business taxes or subsidies to producers. And the third would be government regulations. Okay. And the P would be productivity, usually technology. Okay. All right. All right. So look, for causes of inflation, like I have demand pull inflation. I mean, you could put this in your notes, but I think you would know it. All that is AD going to the right, driving up prices. Okay. So anytime AD shifts right, price levels go up, and that would be what they would call demand pull inflation. I'm just putting that there for you, like to see. The second one, they test. All right. Second one, they test a lot. Cost push inflation. And this is a tricky one. SRAS shifts left. And I only say it's a tricky one because it's also stagflation. It's the same thing. Sometimes they call it cost push inflation. Sometimes they call it stagflation. So leftward shift. The stag part is output is down. The inflation part is price levels go up. And it's a hard one to fix because you have two problems. You have inflation and high output. All right. So it could be cost push inflation or stagflation. I have to think there's a question like that on the unit test because there's always one on the AP exam. Okay. And that's any leftward supply shift. All right. And this cost push inflation. Okay. And then I just put in, and just to remind you, I don't know, did I even leave space there on your thing? Anytime you're to the left and you're in a recession, you have cyclical unemployment. Okay. And that's just to remind you. Remember, this is full unemployment, which is like structural and frictional. And then if it's the left of that, that means unemployment is increasing, and that has to be cyclical. Sorry, that's just to remind me that I have to take my medicine. All right, so you got classical versus Keynes. All right, so here's the things you would remember. Classical, the LRAS is perfectly inelastic. The second thing you should remember is classical things. No government intervention. All right. Straight, perfectly inelastic supply curve, no government intervention. That the economy will eventually fix itself. Keynes is kind of what we're doing. And that's like the Keynes curve. But that's like what we've been working on, because Keynes believes that you need fiscal policy. Okay. And remember, the horizontal is the Keynes, where it starts curving a little is the intermediate, and the straight up and down is the classical. And he believes government has to intervene. Okay. All right. Keynes, classical. And here's his curves. I did break them out there. All right. The AP exam is getting better at saying like the supply curve is perfectly horizontal, and there's an upward sloping supply curve. So I do think they're better in not making you memorize the Keynes curve. Okay, fiscal policy. All right, so government has two different, they could do fiscal or they could do monetary. We are not combining them. We used to teach them both together. We're just going to get you focused on fiscal. We'll do a separate unit on monetary. Okay, so there's two types. There's the discretionary. All right, Congress creates a new bill, but that takes a long time. So the discretionary is government spending and taxes. The non-discretionary, which they sometimes call automatic stabilizers, that's more like welfare, unemployment, the progressive tax system. So those are already in place. So when we're in a recession, people get unemployment checks, they pay less taxes. So theoretically, with your unemployment check, and because you're paying less taxes, you're going to consume more, and you start shifting AD to the right and kind of fixing that recession. Where on the other hand, when things are going well, you're paying more taxes, less unemployment, less welfare. So maybe you slow the economy down before government could pass those. Okay. So here is expansionary. The goal is to reduce unemployment, increase GDP. So you're trying to shift AD to the right by increasing government spending, shifter of AD, decreasing taxes, shifter of consumption, which shifts AD. Or you could do both. Okay. And then a recessionary, that was just all right, so that's expansionary. Okay. All right, contractionary is when you have an inflationary gap. You're trying to reduce inflation, decrease GDP, AD left. You're decreasing government spending, or you're increasing taxes, or you're doing them both. Okay, so when government intervenes, we're going to shift AD to get to the long run. When government doesn't intervene, we're going to shift SRAS to get to the long run. Okay. All right. Did I have this here? Yeah. All right. Marginal propensity to consume. I might have shifted. All right. It's how much people consume. So if you have more change in disposable income, it's over the change in consumption. We did a couple of multiple choice practice yesterday on that. So like know the formulas. I think on today's sheet that I'm giving you, I put all the formulas you need to know for this unit on the page. Okay. And then, you know, if you have it, the NPS is just going to be change in savings over change in income. And remember, NPC plus NPS equals 1. I think that becomes an important thing to remember. Okay, and there's marginal propensity to save. Okay. All right, so calculating the multiplier, you could use the simple. All right, so I should say this too. They sometimes call it the simple spending multiplier. They sometimes call it the multiplier. They sometimes call it the Keynes multiplier. All the same. Okay, 1 over NPS or 1 over 1 minus NPC. The tendency is in the problem to give you NPC when they're asking you about the multiplier. Either one of these formulas get you to where you want to be. Okay. All right. And just remember, like the multiplier works with anything with aggregate demand. So if investment goes up, net exports goes up, government spending goes up, if consumption goes up. All right. All right. This to me is a really important formula. Change in GDP multiplier times initial change in spending. Like we were doing those problems yesterday where like, you had to figure out how much of the gap. So that would be the change in GDP. And then sometimes they give you the multiplier and the initial change and ask you how much GDP is going to change. I think if you know that formula, that gets you 2 to 4 questions in the multiple choice. $12 people failed the test last year. Got under, I shouldn't say failed the test because they did worse than that. 12 people got under 18 out of 30. All right, the tax multiplier, I only use my simple version here, 1 minus spending multiplier. Okay, 1 minus the spending multiplier for the tax multiplier. Okay. I do not know what I'm trying to do on this one. I guess maybe I'm saying the gap is 20. So here, if the gap is 20, and trying to decrease it, the NPC, so that would be the multiplier is 4, so you decrease spending by 5 billion. I guess it was an example of the multiplier. Okay. And that's just another example. All right, where it says deficit spending is when government spends and has to borrow money. So they're spending more than the tax revenue they're bringing in, and that leads to crowding out. Because when government spends, they got to borrow from banks, driving up the interest rates, and that's why crowding out goes. Okay, do you guys have any questions on anything? There's a practice test posted. I have yet to take the practice test. I have taken the regular test.